Welcome to Let's Thrive Postpartum.
Welcome back to Let's Thrive Postpartum. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Ashley. Thanks for joining us today. Hi there, Kelly.
How's your day going? How's your week going?
I'm just tired today. I don't know. I feel like it's been a busy past couple days. I've not been sleeping great. And I don't know. I'm tired.
And I think that's fair. I think there's so many of us who feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
sleeping not working well can mess with everything.
I know. It affects everything.
Yes.
How's your day and week going?
Good. I am actually kind of the opposite and energized. I've been talking as we're kind of growing Thrive, I've been talking to so many experts who have been through something similar and who want to share their stories and help other moms. I mean, the
Oh, that's
amount of
amazing.
moms wanting to support moms kind of gives me goosebumps. The amount of people
Yeah.
who've just like, I've been there, I get it. What can I do? Moms could change the world. I feel like we do
Yeah.
anyways, but I mean, it
I
says a
know.
lot, the
Yeah.
giving
Well, I think
forward.
that's the exciting thing about Thrive, the community that you're building, and just the podcast, just sharing stories and having the space for women to, I don't know, share what's been going on with them. It feels very special.
It does. And if you're a mom listening and you want to share what's going on with you or have questions or want to join our conversation, email us.
Yep.
Podcast at wethrivepostpartum.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. It'd be wonderful.
So with that, we want to jump in to a slightly different type of topic today. We've been spending time talking with moms and with experts about postpartum depression and anxiety. And we wanted this to be one of those episodes that you can bookmark and come back to. We really want to talk about what is postpartum depression, anxiety, what can you do to plan for it? Is there anything you can do you can plan for it? And just to really provide some of that sound education that you don't have to listen to all the time, but is here when you need it. Come back and find this episode.
Yeah. This would be a really great episode for you to share with a friend, a family member, someone who, you feel like maybe there's something going on. This one is going to be just full of resources and education, kind of like an interactive fact sheet.
Exactly. So, because so many of us, I say so many of us, let me start by talking about myself in particular, didn't know what was happening. I
Hmm.
thought what I was going through was just, I'm oversensitive. This is normal motherhood. It was not. And so, if I would
Yeah.
have known up front some of the stuff that we're about to talk through, I think it could have helped me get support sooner and not
Yep.
have suffered for so long. So, that's kind of our goal,
Yep.
hoping to educate you if you're not sure what you're feeling. Is it normal? Is it not? Let's answer some of those questions, Ashley.
Yeah. I think that'd be great. I'm going to dive right in and I just want to go over like some basic definitions of some of the terms that you've probably heard us using that you might hear your doctor use. The first one is going to be what a lot of people refer to as PMADs. Those are the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Lots of people just refer to them as PMADs for short. The term perinatal is really important. So that really means the period while you are pregnant and after pregnancy. So perinatal covers pregnancy and the postpartum period. Now, when you hear the word postpartum, right now, that is post-pregnancy. Lots of places will say it's considered up to 12 months. Many people now are saying that it's actually longer than that, but postpartum just refers to the time after the baby has been born. The other one I want to start off with that we hear a lot about, and Kelly, you and I have talked a lot about this, are the baby blues. Yeah, that is something that every mom seems to be familiar with. Not many people are as familiar with PMADs and all these other terms, but the baby blues are kind of that period right after birth up to 2 weeks where because of the drop in hormones and the big change in hormones, you're experiencing some mood swings, irritability. You're going to have some anxiety, some fatigue, some sadness, teariness. I think the classic example people hear about is, crying at commercials and that kind of thing.
I
The
did
important
that.
thing to know about, yeah, I did too. I did too. So much. The important thing to note with baby blues is it occurs immediately after birth. and it lasts no longer than 2 weeks. And so if things are going after 2 weeks and you're still noticing big mood swings, big anxiety, depressive symptoms, and sadness, that is going to be kind of an indicator that it's possible that something else is going on. And
Let me
like
ask you, can I
yeah,
ask
go
you a
ahead,
question
Kelly.
to that? So
Yeah.
2 weeks is up. I feel great. But then
Hmm.
something else hits me 3 weeks later. Could that be, does
Yeah.
baby blues come back?
No, no.
It
That
doesn't.
is
Okay.
probably that there's something else going on. Baby blues, I think, is more linked, not a medical professional here. It's more linked to the big hormonal changes that are going on in a woman's body after giving birth. And so we know that these perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, they can occur in a really wide range of time
Hmm.
after somebody has given birth. And so you might have the baby blues, then you might feel great. You might not have the baby blues and feel great. And then you could notice at 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month, we hear many women talk about months into the postpartum period when the depression and anxiety hits. And so if you're noticing any big changes after that 2 week period, that is a sign that there could be something else going on.
That's great to know. So if it's longer than 2 weeks, you
Yep.
probably want to start looking at what else could it be. It's
Yeah.
very
What
time
else could it
boxed.
be? Yeah. Yep. Definitely. So we'll do, Kelly, do you want to give just so that people know like how often this occurs, how many
Yeah.
people this affects? Like what are some of the stats and stuff that you've learned?
Yeah. So I think that's what it is. I love math. I love the stats behind things. It's just the dork in me. But I think not realizing how normal this was
Hmm.
brings a lot of shame that moms put on themselves. And this isn't shameful. This is very, very normal. Postpartum depression and anxiety are the number one complication from childbirth, hands down. And so, but hearing numbers behind it, it's great to hear that it's normal. It's great. But 1 in 5 moms will get postpartum depression. So if you look at your friend group, if you look at your family members, you likely know more than 5 women. One of them has it or has had it in
Yeah.
their lifetime. And so bringing that down, so if you're just looking in the United States, women who give birth every year, that comes out to between 800,000 and 1 million women who get postpartum depression and anxiety every single year.
Yeah.
What's even more worrying, or there's more potential to help, is 75% of those women, so 600,000 women, are never diagnosed and never get help.
Yeah.
And with postpartum depression and anxiety, and actually, I know you're going to talk about this, but it's treatable. And the sooner you start getting help, the sooner you can start your recovery journey. And so it's really reaching out to those 600,000 women who don't know what this is. Maybe you don't have a formal diagnosis, but being able to look and say, hey, something isn't right. How do I support myself? How do I ask for help? Those are the conversations we want to have. And what's interesting is postpartum depression doesn't just occur to women. There are
Hmm.
lots of reasons. It's not just 100% hormone related. There's all these other factors that can play into it. And if you have postpartum depression, your husband is 50% likely to get it as well at some point in his life. He's 10% likely to have it while you are pregnant.
Yep.
10% of men get it. So if you're struggling, it's also very likely that your significant partner who's in that household is going to get a form of postpartum depression for men as well. So there's a lot we can do. It's really, really normal. And I think once you think about, I'm not feeling great, there are 1 million other moms in the same situation this year alone dealing with it. It just makes you want to have the conversation more and more. And to
Yeah.
also realize you can go talk to your friends or your coworkers or people that you interact with, because the chances are extremely high if they didn't have it or suffer with it, they absolutely can point you to somebody who did.
Yeah. And I think that the sheer number of women and the fact that you said 75%, go undiagnosed is, you'll hear lots of people in the maternal world of like, yeah, maybe that's what I felt like, but I just, I got through it and it was now I'm okay. But the thing is why do you need to suffer for
Hmm.
one more day longer than you need to,
That's it.
right? It's not necessary. And so reaching out and asking for help, leaning on support, you know, yes, in some cases, going the routes of seeing a therapist and taking medication, it is all for the goal of helping women feel their best as quickly as possible. There's no
Yes.
need, there's no need to suffer for so long. And that's part of reducing the stigma and the shame around this, because you can feel better. There are so many different options to help treat this. And we're here to share and try and spread the information.
We are. And I think you hit it spot on. As a mom, we think so much about our children and our partners and everybody else to help, but you wouldn't look at your child and say, my child is suffering. He or she will get over it. I'm just going to let it go. He or she
Yeah.
will be fine in a year. You would never do that. So
Yeah.
how do you look at that same compassion to yourself to say, I don't need to suffer. I could be better for myself. I could feel better, right? You would
Yeah.
do that for your kids. So kind of thinking through, I love that you say you don't have to suffer a day longer than you need to,
Yeah. I
but it
always
is
think about
getting
that. The
help.
quote, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it that way, or doesn't mean you should live with it for as long as so many people do. Um, and so let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about like what people can look out for when we're talking about, we focus a lot on postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And so parts of postpartum, or what some people might say perinatal depression, because it can occur while you're pregnant as well as after you've given birth. But you're going to be seeing potentially signs of anger and irritability, lack of interest in the baby, or kind of a difficult time bonding with your baby, appetite and sleep disturbance, crying and sadness, big feelings of guilt, shame, and hopelessness, loss of interest and joy or pleasure in things that you used to enjoy, and then potential thoughts of harming your baby or harming yourself. And one of the biggest things, when we're looking at mental illness is how it is affecting your ability to kind of live life as you normally have. How is it impacting your daily living? And so if you're seeing any of those, it could be a sign that there's something else going on and you can reach out for help. With postpartum anxiety, the list of those symptoms can include constant worry, always feeling like something bad is going to happen, racing thoughts, again, disturbances in your sleep and in your appetite, not being able to sleep, not being able to fall asleep, not being hungry and not being able to eat, the inability to sit still. And there's even some physical symptoms like dizziness, hot flashes, and nausea. So again, these are symptoms that if you're experiencing them could indicate that there's just something else going on. Kelly,
And I
can
think,
you talk through, like, with your experience, what did some of these look like, right? It's
yeah,
easy for me to list off as some symptoms, but what does this look like in real life? Let's talk through
let's do,
that a little bit.
because I do think everybody presents differently, right? So my experience sharing is not likely could be your experience, right? But
Mhm.
you said it best to me when you and I first met and we were talking about our experiences through this. And you said, it hinders your ability to function. It's a
Mhm.
problem. Well, that it
Yeah.
sums up me in so many different levels. I guess I've been sad in my life. So I just felt like, okay, maybe postpartum depression wasn't a thing. But I remember sitting on the couch with my child who I loved dearly and feeling like my life was never going to be okay again. I had given up who I was. I remember seeing a therapist and talking about the loneliness, and I was by myself. And there was no happiness. There was no like, I'm so overjoyed and I loved my child. It wasn't that, but just that absolutely, I was in a pit and it was pure dark and I was there by myself. I wasn't there by myself. I had friends, I had family. I could have done all these things, but
Yeah.
mentally, I was there by myself. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how people do this. And I started working with a therapist and she sat down. I know Ashley and I start every podcast that we try to do of what is bringing you happiness right now.
Yeah.
She had me sit down and try to write like whatever something every day that brings you happiness. And I did not know a single thing I could do for myself that made me happy. Nothing. I had to
Yeah.
make a list. I have a minute. What is one thing? And so I think looking back and just realizing I had no joy, I didn't feel like me anymore. The appetite changes that we talked about, either some people eat a lot or don't. I comfort fed
Yeah.
myself with every horrible, unhealthy thing you could eat. And it was just the lowest of the low feeling. And that's not what I thought motherhood should have been. But mine didn't hit for weeks after. I mean, I made it through baby blues. I was great. Around week 6 is when all of this hit at one time for
Mhm.
me. And so
Yeah.
if it's, but it did change my ability to function as a happy person because I
Yeah.
didn't think I could function at all. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just how alone and desperate and sad could you be? And I didn't
Yep.
realize I could be that sad and desperate.
Yeah. Well, and that's something, we'll talk a little bit later about, when you're communicating with your partner, but your partner will probably notice like, Kelly, you really used to enjoy doing this. You used to enjoy watching this. You used to enjoy going here and doing that. And now you're saying you don't want to do any of it, right? That
Nothing.
there's no, and the thing is like for you in those moments, you probably can't even imagine that eating your favorite meal would actually even be enjoyable, right?
No,
Like,
nothing.
yeah,
Nothing seemed like it was going to bring me happiness. Like there was no
yeah,
way out of the deep darkness that I was in.
yeah,
And that's not normal.
yeah,
Right? I mean, it's
yeah,
just, and I think realizing this isn't what every mother experiences took me a while
yeah,
to get
yeah.
out.
Just something that needs, yeah, it's something that is a sign that there's extra attention that needs to be paid and brought to you. And I know for me with anxiety, I definitely had the sleep and appetite disturbances. Like I couldn't eat. Once it got dark
Mhm.
outside, suddenly felt like I was gonna vomit all over the place.
Yeah.
Sleeping, like couldn't sleep, couldn't fall asleep constantly. Felt like, I have to be looking and staring at my baby, and that's what is making him breathe, which I
Same.
now
I didn't know that
recognize
wasn't
like, what?
normal. That's not normal.
Yeah. And I remember somebody telling me at some point, I was like, yeah, no, like I'm kind of worried a lot and I'm having a hard time sleeping. And they were like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think everybody does that. And I was like, but like, I literally cannot fall asleep. And they were like, oh, well, no, I mean, you probably should be able to sleep like at least a little bit. And I was like, oh, really? Like a little? Because I can't at all.
Okay. So, and I know this will come up multiple times, but the
Yeah.
whole phrase I think we've talked about triggers both of us sleep when the baby sleeps. Well, when you
Hmm.
have anxiety
Yeah.
and you can't sleep when the baby sleeps, I wanted to throat punch the next person who said that
Yes.
to me
Yes.
because one, our
Yes.
baby didn't sleep very well, but
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing when you have anxiety, when you just have to sit there and watch her sleep.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And some of the constant worry, we've talked a lot. This shows up in some ways as irrational thoughts, right? So this whole belief of like if I go to sleep, something awful will happen to my baby, right?
Mm.
We know like that's not grounded in reality. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, what about me going to sleep is going to make something bad happen to my baby? Nothing, right? There is nothing about one person going to sleep that's going to make or cause something else awful to happen. And also those intrusive thoughts. And that is something moms bring up all the time are these intrusive, scary thoughts, which are very, very normal, but
And
also
terrifying.
and terrifying, right? One of my favorite things to say is two things can be true that I heard from another psychologist out there. And two things can be true, right? Like something can be so, so scary, it can be terrifying, and it can be normal and part of like this mindset that happens. And it's okay to ask for help and work through them because sitting alone with scary thoughts is terrifying, right? And it starts to like, it messes with you.
It
And
does.
so those are another sign of like, okay, this is, I need to talk this through someone. I don't need to hold this by myself, right? It doesn't even necessarily mean with intrusive thoughts that something is wrong, but it does mean like it's not something you need to hold by yourself.
Not, and it is terrifying. So we've talked about this before. Intrusive thoughts were what I call my bottom. That was when I had been doing anxiety, I had been going through depression, had months of that. And then the intrusive thoughts of my child dying over and over kept hitting
Yeah.
like black and white Polaroid pictures. And I didn't feel, I felt shame for that. How do you tell your husband I keep having thoughts of my child dying without saying I'm not a harm to my child? I wasn't going to
Right.
do it. I knew that. I was
Yeah.
overly protective and overly anxious about keeping her healthy.
Yep.
That started showing as intrusive thoughts. So it is
Yeah.
normal. And that was something I had never heard about. And it was the very first
Yeah.
question my therapist asked. And I was
Same.
terrified saying yes was going to mean they were going to take my child from me. That
Yeah.
was my number one fear of how do you say I have this? Don't take my child because I'm a good
Yeah.
mom. It was
Yeah.
that kind of irrational fear. But now knowing they're normal,
Yeah.
it's groundbreaking. Like I
Yeah.
wish every mom knew this is a possibility, and you're not a bad mom.
Yeah, I know. It's something I experience myself. It's something I hear from so many moms, and almost every single mom is like, I was so scared to tell someone that this is what was going on in my
Hmm.
brain because I thought that there was something horribly wrong with me. And the thing is intrusive thoughts are just thoughts,
Thoughts.
right?
Hmm.
Thoughts are not actions, thoughts are not intent.
Hmm.
And we don't touch a whole lot on this, but there is a big difference between an intrusive thought, which is just kind of this like picture playing in your mind of something horrible happening, and what is more associated with like postpartum psychosis, which is where there might be hallucinations, hearing things, seeing things, and thinking that some of these intrusive thoughts are like actually good ideas or actually something that you would act on and make sense. If your intrusive thoughts are scaring you, that is a positive sign
It
because it
is.
means, right, like your brain is trying to integrate so many things as you go into motherhood in terms of how everything about your life has changed. If your intrusive thoughts are scaring you, that's a positive thing because it means that you know, right, this isn't something you're going to do. This is something you would never do. It makes no sense. And so your brain is like, what is going on? What the heck?
Yeah. And it's so few people get postpartum psychosis. And I know it makes the news, we hear about it, but it's
Yep.
one out of every 1,000 deliveries is the
Yeah.
stat, where one in five get the postpartum depression and anxiety. There's a huge difference between that. So the likelihood is small. And you're right,
Yep.
it's the feeling bad about it that is a good thing.
Yeah. And so this again, if anybody does have thoughts that they are thinking that this might be something that they would act on, or their intrusive thoughts are not scaring them, then that is a sign that we normally would say like immediate medical attention, right? If this is something you've noticed in your partner or you're noticing, you may not be noticing it in yourself, but that is something, go to the nearest emergency room, call your doctor, get some immediate help because that's where there's a really big concern of risk to the mother and for the baby.
There is. And so you're right, 988 suicide hotline. There's a lot of numbers you can call. Watch out for your partner. But
Yep.
Ashley, if we've talked about this is normal, there's
Hmm.
a lot of things that don't feel good. How do we plan for this? Can you plan for this? So let's think about it. You've just spent
Yeah.
9 months growing a baby. You've gone through delivery, assuming some we're talking about, postpartum.
Yeah.
I was a type A planner. I wanted to know, I read every baby book. I wanted to know everything I should have in my baby registry. I had 14 different size of pacifiers because what if she wanted one over the other? All
Yep.
of these things that I did were for my child.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with my husband and saying, watch out for this. Postpartum depression could be a thing. Let's just watch out for it.
Yeah.
We did nothing to mentally plan or prepare to help me. I didn't know that was a thing I should do. Is there
Yeah.
something that, as a mom, you could do to help yourself or start planning for this potential?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are what we call and what Thrive has is creating a postpartum plan. And this is not a plan for the baby. This is a plan for the mom. And, you know, I don't know. I think mothers have a hard time focusing on themselves. And so let's cover a couple points about why it's important for moms to focus on themselves and be able to have a plan to help feel supported through the postpartum recovery process. A couple more facts. I'm going to spit at you real fast,
I
Kelly,
love
and
it.
then we can soften it with some conversation. But we do know that mothers who have untreated perinatal mood and anxiety disorders you're more likely to have a harder time managing your own health, have poor nutrition. It's going to be more likely that some of these mothers may be turning to substances like alcohol, tobacco, and drugs to help manage the symptoms that they're experiencing. They might be less responsive to their baby's cues, have a harder time bonding with their baby, fewer positive reactions with their baby or with their children, experience breastfeeding challenges.
Hmm.
PMADs can be a big contributing factor for women that are having a hard time breastfeeding. And it causes women just to question like their competence as a mom. And as we all know, as moms who have been there, when you're not feeling very confident about your ability to be a mom, that also just has a huge impact on this experience that, most women are telling themselves is supposed to be like really, really enjoyable and like really, really happy. And so the more you can take care of yourself, I like to say, I tell clients of mine all the time, like healthy parents raise healthy kids. And if you can take care of yourself, you're going to improve your interactions and bonding with your children, which is going to have more positive outcomes down the road with the relationship between you and your child. So there's so many things that you can do. So when it comes to postpartum planning, Kelly, why don't you talk about a little bit the kind of framework that Thrive has and some of the four things that we want to think about when it comes to the postpartum plan.
Absolutely. So if you want a free postpartum plan that you can print out and use kind of as your own directory and kind of think through your thoughts, go to wethrivepostpartum.com/postpartum dash plan. It's free. Download it, fill it out. It can help you start thinking through some of these things. But what we want to talk about is stuff that you can literally sit here and think through in your head with a piece of paper, but looking at practical supports for you as a mom. As a mom with a baby, you take your child to the pediatrician regularly that first 6 months. You do certain checkups, you do certain things, but what are you doing for yourself? So looking through that practical support, and we are focusing it around the Thrive Method framework, which looks at your whole self. So we're looking at your body. It's the first part. That is your sleep. How are you eating, your nutrition, your water intake, your movement, or what is called exercise? All of those things play into how you can support yourself. How are you looking at your mind with those mental health check-ins, reframing negative thoughts? What are you saying to yourself internally? What are you looking at and supporting for your soul? And by soul, we consider that what makes you you, right? Those happy moments that I couldn't find for the life of me. Those things of like social check-ins, things that make you feel better. And then looking at your role as a new mom, whether you have your first child or if this is your fifth child, how does that impact basic practical stuff that you're going through that first year? Who's doing chores? Who's doing certain things? Who is helping you? Are you going back to work? All of these things play into a plan that can help you have a little bit of structure to make sure that you are supporting yourself and also identifying when you may need additional help.
Yeah. And it's so important for this plan. I mean, it's downloadable. You can fill it in. Like, I recommend have this plan, have a copy of it, give a copy to your spouse or your partner, give a copy to other support people that are around you so that they know what your hopes are, what your wishes are, what support people are in place. So like Kelly said, this is covering like, what is the plan for sleeping? What are those shifts going to look like with your physical recovery? Like, if this happens, are you going to need to be in bed? Who's going to be helping out with X, Y, and Z? Really thinking through all these different parts of what your life, what the mom's life looks like after the baby comes. Who's bringing meals? Who's cooking? Is your partner going to do a mental health check-in with you and kind of help rate how you're feeling, just to help keep an eye out for any big mood concerns? Visitors, who's allowed to come visit the baby? What is the policy in terms of who can hold, or do you want people to wash their hands first? All these things that you don't necessarily think about ahead of time, but can really cause a lot of anxiety in the moment when they come up, right? Who's doing your laundry? Who's going to take out the trash or walk your dog? Everybody's life is different, which is why a postpartum plan is going to be unique to every single person that's having a baby. But getting some of these things in place, I mean, this I think is something should be done for any woman, right? It doesn't matter if you're worried about, certain mental health conditions or that kind of thing. But this is a chance for like us to say as women, like, okay, how am I going to be taken care of after my body has done the most heroic thing that a body will ever do?
Yes. And recovering from it and probably a little sleep deprived at the exact same
Yeah.
time.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think, a postpartum plan is not something it never even occurred to me in terms of I was like, yeah, I've got a couple frozen meals in the freezer. And that was like about it. And I was like, I'll just keep doing laundry. I'll keep, I'll make sure the dogs go on a walk. I'll just put them by the stroller. But then it became this list of all these things I had to figure out when I was not feeling great. And so it was just this extra layer of anxiety and frustration and confusion that, I think personally for me, if I had had a plan and had it laid out, I kind of did with my second, but it streamlined the communication between me and my husband, kind of let them know, like, this is what I need. These are people I can call, have your doctor's phone numbers, have some postpartum support, support groups, those phone numbers and contact info ready to go, because there's nothing worse that than trying to find information when you don't feel good.
And that's what I did. I remember sitting in bed, bawling my eyes out, searching the internet for a postpartum certified therapist in the state of South Carolina who could help me. And then
Yeah.
reaching out, getting on wait list, finding they weren't available, trying to get to doctors. It was not a fun time. But if you think through, plan and say, if I start to feel bad, what am I going to do? If you can't
Mhm.
find someone nearby, if you don't know what that plan is going to be, highly consider coming to Join Thrive Postpartum. Let us be your community. Let us be your support. Jump in, meet other moms, join some support groups. It's a great way to find other people going through and also get some education about different things that you can do for yourself. So it's a good plan if you don't have a local source. Let us be that source.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't need something to be wrong to have community and to have
No,
support, right? It's something everybody deserves. And I think that's the more women who can focus in, I think, on themselves just a little bit after giving birth and think about, like, what do I need? What feels good for me? What feels restorative? What like makes me feel connected to other people? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but we have such a hard time focusing on ourselves.
we do. And
And
even if you make a plan, right? Have that plan, know what you're going to do, let all your support people know your plan. But even with a plan, it's still likely 1 in 5 are going to get this. So having a
Mhm.
plan will not likely keep you from getting postpartum depression anxiety, but what it will do will help you identify, I don't feel as good as I should.
Yep.
What am I going to do to start getting help? Because the sooner you start getting support, the sooner you can start that recovery journey. And that's our
Yeah.
goal for you. How do we equip you with ways to help identify I need help versus sitting and suffering a day longer than you have to, like Ashley mentioned?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about shortening for so many women, just shortening the time span from realizing that they need help to actually getting the help and feeling better. And we want that to be as short as possible.
We do. And let's talk really quickly while we're in this about
Yeah.
what that recovery experience looks like. Again, everybody has a different experience, so everybody's recovery is going to look different, but there are some generalizations. So that million women, 1 in 5 who get postpartum depression anxiety, 50% on average start to get relief in 3 to 6 months. That's a long time still. 25% are 6 months to a year before they start feeling better with support. Another group, 25%, takes longer than a year. And I was one of those lucky 25% who lasted longer than a year. But the more you had treatment and the more you could support yourself, the better. Because Ashley, did you have the same experience? But I feel like it's not a linear one day you wake up and it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
It's
No.
very much a 1 step forward, 4 steps back, and then a little bit
Yep.
more forward and back. There are good
Yeah.
days and bad days. And that plan,
Yep.
having a plan thought through, can help you identify, hey, I'm taking a couple steps back. What I've
Hmm.
identified it, I'm very aware of it. What can I do for my plan to move myself back forward?
Yeah.
Did you have, was that similar to
Oh,
you?
yes. Yeah. Mine was up and down and up and down. Over time, a general upwards trajectory, but lots of
Yes.
ups and downs.
And I think that's it. Just a general over time, moving it forward one day at a time,
Yeah.
because this is
Yeah.
curable.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So
Well,
we're gonna include some of these stats. So come to wethrivepostpartum.com, check out our blog. We've got links to where all these stats come from. They
yep.
are from Postpartum Support International, from the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance. There are
Yep.
great organizations who are fighting for policy changes in support for women. So we're using a lot of their data that they publicly are sharing. And also come look, get a free plan plan this out, equip yourself with as much as you can. If we can help you, feel free to email us, chat with us. We'd love to know what you think and how else we can help.
Yep. And again, if there's anything ever that comes up that's concerning, we always encourage women, reach out to your doctors, tell a friend, let somebody know that you're not feeling your best so that you can step into action, step into your plan, and get on the road to feeling better.
100%. We hope this free plan is helpful. Again, you can always reach Ashley and I at podcast@wethrivepostpartum.com. And we look forward to seeing you next episode. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please be sure to hit subscribe, leave us your feedback, and give us a 5-star review. For even more support, visit us at wethrivepostpartum.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community. Remember, you are not alone. With support, you can feel better. Together, let's thrive postpartum.